Welcome back, everybody. All right, good to see everybody. Welcome back. We are going to go ahead and get started. We've got Michelle Werner joining us today. Hello, Michelle. All right. All right, here we go. So we're going to dive right into, we got a lot of content today. So we're going to dive into session 2 of the Emerging Leaders Civic Advancement Training Program for LEs. And today we're really going to, at a high level, talk about 3 of the other ECQs, ECQ 3, 4, and 5, which is results driven, business acumen, and building coalitions. So I'll make today's session as exciting as I can, because some of the topics aren't that exciting. So we'll try to share some stories and make it interactive as well. So stay tuned in, because I'm going to call on you as we go through today's course. If you can, cameras on, microphones off just until you speak, but we'll make it interactive and I'll ask questions and you can type it into chat. So we'll go ahead and get rolling. All right. If I can, here we go. Get my mouse going. Here we go. So Allie and I are back with you. All of you know Allie and I by now. Allie, you want to say hello to everybody? Right, Allie must be.
Oh, sorry. I was not sure about the mute button thing. So, hi, good morning, everybody. I was telling James when we joined on, I was like, I hate to say this, but it does feel a little like Monday. I mean, you really can't say that because it's Wednesday. So, anyway, happy Wednesday, but it's great to be with everybody again.
Yeah, happy Wednesday. You can tell it's been a busy week for everybody already.
I know.
I feel the same.
What year is it? Yes.
So here's today's agenda. We'll really kick things off with ECQ 3, results driven, ECQ 4 is business acumen, and then ECQ 5, business coalitions, and how all this intertwines with leadership. And then we'll go ahead and wrap up towards the end. We'll get you out probably way before our time limit. I've shortened these up a little bit, but we'll make it as exciting as we can, because these are 3 really important ECQs. So my first question for everybody, go ahead and type in your answer in chat, but what excites you as you prepare for your role as an LE? Is there anything that's jumped out at you? Are you excited for the campaign? Okay, working with new agencies. Good, Jen. Opportunities to meet new people. That's a good one. Meeting new people. Yep. Love it. Love it. You know, and helping others too, right? Helping others, meeting new people.
Yeah,
Learning.
you'll get to meet all these charities too. That'll be cool.
Look at Thomas, learning with new people. So Thomas probably off the charts, Mensa smart already, because he works for Stratcom. But
Of course. Yes.
I love it. Lifelong
Stratcom all the way.
I love it. All right. And then my other question is, what would help set you up as a successful LE? You know, obviously we spend a lot of time on onboarding, training. You know, training I think is critical, but outside of the training, what are some other things that we could do to help you set you up for success? Tough question. You got to think. See, they think it's a Monday too, Allie. All right. Okay, here we go. Okay, having the correct contact information for agencies. Thank you, George. Good point. That is a tall task every year. Ongoing support and accessibility. Yep. Clear expectations and a pathway. Okay, good. Good. So you know what?
Hey,
to fill in the
James,
gaps. Yeah.
can I ask Tom to clarify a little bit that clear expectations and a pathway? I think many of us appreciate that. Are you feeling you're getting that, or do you need that?
Yeah, I think so far the training's been, pretty clear, of just the roles and expectations of not just the learned executives, but from the entire program.
Okay,
Um,
okay,
that way, roles and responsibilities of who's doing what, and then how we get to those goals. But yeah, I think so far it's been great.
okay. I,
Okay,
thi-
good.
I think, yeah, that's what I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on, because if we need to spend a little bit more time on that, even James and I could help do that too. So, all right,
Yeah.
thanks for that additional information. Back to
Yeah.
you,
And
James.
yeah, and trust me, this is my 8th year, and the joke is always like, oh my goodness, the campaign is coming at you like a freight train, and every year I feel like I'm always behind. And I'm scrambling to get contact information uploaded in Zone Manager, you know, identify, all the correct addresses so we can ship things out. You want to have personal conversations with as many of the assigned accounts as possible to develop that personal relationship. We want to do training, and I always feel like I'm behind. And kind of back to a couple of the comments, the Cynthia had a good one with ongoing support and accessibility. We're going to be meeting weekly as a team, so you'll have ongoing support and accessibility. And then there's no reason why we all can't talk whenever. If you need something, give us a call, shoot us an email, send us a text. This campaign season, it feels like we're online all the time. And especially for subcontractors like Allie and myself, we may be doing something else or have other meetings in the meat part of the day, the busy part of the day. But then, I'm sending out emails and following up with people in the evenings, or the weekends. So I hope you won't find yourself in that role, but we're always playing catch up on that. And I'm just used to it. To me, I think it's fun. But to Tom's point about clear expectations, we haven't really publicized this, but know that each one of the zones come up with their own goal for the campaign. Normally, they look at the historical numbers for the number of donors and number of pledged dollars pledged in the last 3 years of the campaign. Normally, I'll look at the zones I manage, and then I'll turn right around and come up with a goal either equal or greater by 10% to what we did last year. I'm really optimistic that the zones that I'm involved with, zone 12 and 13, are going to do great, really because of all of you. I've not had the privilege or the pleasure of working with LEs. I'm kind of used to doing it by myself. And you know, many hands makes light work. And so, we're going to be better together. So I'm really excited. I know Allie feels the same way, but, and then each one of the assigned accounts that we work with, same type of philosophy. We want to set a goal. And to me, that's one of the most important parts of what our role is to help define the plan, create the goal, and then share the results each week and help monitor the people's success. We want them to be as excited about the numbers as we are. So that's part of it as well. So all right. Okay. So we talked about the program purpose, really, of the Emerging Leaders Civic Advancement Training. It's really focused on the CFC volunteers, but we're trying to give real world leadership experience to all of you. And we're excited that you are with us again. Today's session will be kind of the final training part. Next week's session will be led by Allie, and that will be more application, and we'll make it more discussion based as well. Okay. All right. So let's kick things off with ECQ3. I want to talk about accountability. In chat, if you would, go ahead and write out what you think accountability means. What is it? What does accountability mean to you? Is it positive? Is it negative? What does accountability mean to you? Okay, doing what you say you're going to do. Good, Cynthia. I like that. Following through, positive. All right, good, Theodore. All right, Heather. Yeah, following through, being held to your word, accepting responsibility. All right, wow, those are good. You guys should be teaching the class. So I love accountability. And to me, accountability is just communication. As leaders, we need to hold people accountable by just telling them if they're doing great or they're not doing great. And then in an encouraging, positive way, keep teaching, consulting, constructing, coaching, whatever you want to say. We want to keep communicating with the other parties so, we achieve the results that we're looking for, right? I think it's really important. My thought initially, when someone first asked me this question years and years ago, I used to think accountability was negative. That means your boss has to come to you with an iron fist and, hey, you're doing something wrong, James. It's like, no, I don't like that negative reinforcement. I like the positive reinforcement. So that's why we're going to talk about accountability, because I think it should be just simple communication. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to slam your fist on the desk, and you praise in public and scold in private. And what I mean by that is I like saying good things, nice things, complimentary things about people in public. Hey, you're doing great, Thomas. You're in first place. Or, Mary, congratulations, outstanding job this week. We had set a goal for 5 meetings and you did 7. Outstanding. I like saying things like that in our team meetings in front of other people. Here's a spouse tip of the day. If anybody wants to get some good brownie points, say something flattering to a friend where your spouse could hear in the background, maybe at the next dinner party or social event. But I trust me, your spouses will love it. And employees are the same way. People that you're leading are the same way. They like hearing positive things about themselves. And then the scold in private, if you've got some strong coaching to talk to someone about, or maybe performance standards or something that's upsetting you that they're doing, bring them in a private room where you can have that candid conversation. You normally never want to have that in front of groups. Okay. So I like this quote, accept the responsibility for your action, be accountable for your results, and take ownership for your mistakes. There's no finger pointing as a leader. A true leader doesn't finger point and blame other people for what's falling short. They take responsibility for everything. They want to be accountable for everything and take that ownership. I think that's important. And here's a book I read a long time ago. How many of you, just go ahead and type in yes if you have. There was the book by Ken Blanchard years and years ago. It's probably a good 25, 30 years ago. The book came out, the original one, but it's called The 1 Minute Manager. How many of you have read the book or heard of it? You can just say yes or no. Okay. It actually was a big business book way back when. A couple yeses I see. And it was my kind of reading. It was a thin book, big font, not very many pages, but it was kind of short and to the point. And there was a golden nugget lesson that came out of that book that I really, really enjoy. And I applied to my professional life very quickly. But the gold nugget really was around accountability and managing and motivating people. And it's a 3-step process. It's really simple, but I'll tell you where everybody falls short. The very first point was set goals and expectations in writing. I don't think the book said in writing, but you want to set goals and expectations so everybody has a clear understanding what's expected of them. That ironically was some of your feedback, about being successful in your LE role. I like doing it in writing because then it's something they can retain and remember. Train employees to meet and exceed the goals and expectations. And number 2 is really where most people fall short, the training part, and then hold employees accountable. And what I mean by accountable is communication, positive reinforcement. And I like having, if possible, I like having some kind of bonus plans in place or some type of reward incentives. And this goes back to what Allie and I talked about really understanding the people that you're leading, because some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by words of affirmation. There's different things that motivate people, and leaders, it's important that you understand what that is. Thomas, I saw your hand pop up. Were you just giving me a high five or did you have a question?
Yeah, I was giving you a high five, but yeah, that's kind of, and I found that interesting, me learning that kind of relates to what I was to clarify about the expectations and pathway for working with the coordinators. And just being honest here, I guess this shows my ignorance on the program. It's kind of was interesting when it was brought up that this isn't something that they can choose to do. It's like a mandated, they will, do this. So I think that's pretty cool, that we get to help be part of that expectations and pathway, even though as a new learned executive probably has a lot to learn, but we're getting to be part of that process, not asking them, hey, do you want to participate? No, we're here to help you on a mandated
Right.
program.
Yeah, the
So
participation is a mandate. And that's what's kind of funny about the program. In the good old days, years and years ago, it was almost, it was a mandate that people were aware of the program and participated, but there also was some strong arming of making people give pledges. The boss would be standing, you'd get your payroll check and you'd be walking down the HR line, and then the boss was right there with a CFC form, with their hands out. Where there's no coercion now, so you're not allowed to do that and do some arm twisting. But I like putting the spin on things of talking about, hey, we want to create awareness. We want to market the program so everybody has the opportunity to participate in any way, shape, or form they can. That's a good way of looking at it. So that's a good point. All right. So some other principles around accountability I wanted to talk about. I think it's really important that you create that environment where you feel that talents can flourish. I like using the team acronym: trust, encouragement, accountability, and mentoring. That's an environment where people feel like they're part of something, they're part of a purpose. There's a reason why they go to work. It's fun. There's trust, and that normally that kind of culture, that in work environment, if you can create that, that's where you'll find true success. Okay. And then accountability is really easy because work isn't work, it's fun. And to that point, you want to recruit specific staff to come into your environment. And when you have an environment like that, it's you need to protect it. And so you don't want a toxic employee to come in there, be real negative and bring everybody else down, because it just takes one bad apple to ruin the whole bushel. And you want to remove or protect yourself from even allowing employees that may not fit that culture in there. So you need to be careful about that. I think it's also important to create your values, purpose, and guiding principles, your core values. The purpose, or your why. We've talked a lot about that. I like starting with why. Why are you involved in the combined federal campaign? Well, I'm involved because I lost both my parents to cancer. So it's very personal for me. It's just not a job. I do this because I really care, and I want to raise money to help support my loved ones that I've lost. Everybody has a story. Everybody has their why. It's just our responsibility or opportunity to help people find their why. Okay. When people are working with a why, a purpose behind them, don't you think they're that much more motivated? Right. So I think that's important, and it really just applies a lot more, not just to the CFC or to leading teams, but there's a lot of things that you could use to these points back in your personal life as well. Proper onboarding and training is key. I
Hey,
hope you,
James,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but actually what you just laid out is a perfect piece. If you don't mind, let me go ahead and tell them about the videos.
yeah,
'Cause it really builds on what James just said. So pardon me for interrupting.
yeah. Go ahead.
But James just mentioned about your why and why that was important in getting that message out. And to that point, we were going to share this towards the end of today, but it seems appropriate to go ahead and do it now. So, for those of you who were on a call yesterday with us, maybe it was all of you. Actually, maybe it was none of you. Now that I think about it, as James said, there's been so many meetings. But one of the things that came out of the summer ELCA group was there's a gentleman who works for, I think it's actually OPM he works for, and he wants to do a mini project as a result of his ELCA training. And he has video production background. And so what he wants to do is find some why stories, just as James said, why do you do this? Why is the CFC important to you? Why, as a federal employee, are you getting involved with this? Because yes, the CFC is a mandatory program, but just as James said, your participation is voluntary, it's optional. And so we want to encourage and invite, and those why stories help to do that. And so one of the things we're going to amp up this season is our social media. And so we have team in place to help foster that. If you're good at social media and you want to help with that, just let your account manager know. And that's something that can be done in partnership. But we actually want to feature our LEs. We are extremely proud of all of you. We're excited for the roles that you have. And so we would like to feature you with your why story. And so I'm going to be following up with an email that would do an introduction to this ELCA graduate who I'm talking to about, and try to coordinate then what he would like to do in terms of next steps. And then once those videos are produced, I'll probably have you do some self video taping, getting that footage over to him. He'll edit it. We'll review it for approval before we post it. But it is all about your why as an LE on why you are participating in this role this year, because obviously this means something to you and we want to be able to feature your story. So, James, thanks for letting me interject that now, but it seemed like this was an example of what James was talking about. And we'll be following up soon with next steps for that.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. I ironically was on a Zoom call like this, and we practiced. I practiced with the LFCC chair here in Heart of the Midlands, Zone 12, Terry Morgan, and many of you know Terry Morgan already. But he wanted to put together some scripts and us practice together so I could record his why. And you don't need to do this because he kind of went a little overboard in a positive way. But I think he recorded 7 different scripts about his why and who he gives to, why he gives to them, more about the CFC. And he's been going berserk on social media, dropping these in different zones and on his personal feeds. That's just a little example of how you could use some of those. But it's great marketing, and the real point of all of this is we just want everybody to understand your why, because no longer are you eyeball to eyeball with a federal employee that you don't know very well, and you're asking them to give their hard-earned funds to something they may not know about. It's everybody's a human being. And I can see visibly on people's faces when you have that conversation with them and you talk about loss or your personal story, your personal why, it all of a sudden the walls come down and then they just open up, and it's a lot easier to have that conversation. That's why we're making a big deal about it. So, all right, just to wrap up this part, transparency and gamification. What I mean by that is I like taking our goals and then the actual performance and comparing those in a visible environment so everybody knows how everybody's doing. It shouldn't be a mystery if you're doing good or not. The numbers will tell the story. And I think it's important. That's why I call it gamification. I like making a game of it. It's like, hey, our goal is to get to here, and each week we're going to track our progress. And we could have rewards or make it fun as we're doing it. But I like full transparency in the workplace so people know how we're doing. And then the last comment about creating a personal development plan. When I ran my successful tech company, I owned a company. We were a B2B business. We resold a lot of Cisco and Dell, IBM computers, Microsoft software. We were a big technology reseller based in San Diego, but we had accounts. The federal government was one of my biggest accounts. The San Diego Petco ballpark, the Padres Stadium. My company did all the network infrastructure that went in to that ballpark, and I'm a big sports fan, so that was quite an accomplishment for me. But we won lots of awards. We kind of grew from 300,000 with 3 employees to over 12 million in less than 3 years. But I made a point of following these principles and making that work environment where talents flourished. And we developed a personal development plan for each one of our employees that I wanted to know what they wanted out of the job. I wanted to know what their personal goals were. And then we assigned mentors to them. And it wasn't always their supervisor. It could be a coworker, but we had assigned supervisors to work with them to help them get to that point. And I paid really close attention. A moment ago, I said, hey, it's really important to understand what motivates employees. And that was something that I used to keep people motivated and inspired to perform at the optimum level. Early in my career, the first job I had out of school, the owner, I remember one day coming in, and we were in Los Angeles, California at the time. And I remember, I'm from Nebraska, so don't laugh at me. But now we're in Los Angeles, and he came in, and he was from Nebraska as well. But he was probably about 10 years older than me, 15 years older than me. But he had a really cool pair of elk cowboy boots, brand new pair of cowboy boots. They were elk skin. They were super cool. And I just remember one, wow, those are really cool, Rob. Where'd you get those? And he goes, oh, yeah. He didn't make a big deal about it. But then he paused for a moment, and I remember him saying, what size shoe do you wear? I was like, that's kind of a weird question. Was he thinking of getting me a pair? Why would he ask that? I told him size 10. And about a week later, he ended up getting me a pair of those boots just because it was, he knew how important it was to me. So that's an example of how you want to understand people that you're leading. What motivates them? How can you, keep them inspired? All right. So let's talk about customer service. The old fashioned word is customer service in leadership. There's a lot of other people that call it customer experience, um, client services. It's funny, all the new buzzwords in today's environment that simply talk about customer service. But what does customer service mean to you? When you say customer service, go ahead and type in chat. What does that mean to you? I love your comment, Cherie. I didn't know Cherie here. She's a celebrity, by the way, a very humble celebrity, but her son was a superstar football player for the University of Nebraska. I just learned that the other day. So honored to have you here and get to know you. All right, providing info needed. Good, Jen. Supporting customers' needs. It's a tough one to just come up with an example on the spot, but I'm going to walk through customer service. And to me, it's really being that servant and putting other people's needs before your own, with that servant heart. So the keys to good customer service, I'm going to walk through these 10 pretty quick, but number one is patience and understanding. We need to be patient with persons on the other end. You need to be attentive. You need to have clear communication. It's important to have a strong knowledge of the product or service that we're representing. Okay. And then use positive language to create a favorable perception. So if any of you ever noticed, if you call Verizon or any customer support help desk, they normally, hey, I'm so happy that you called today. Let me understand your problem. And then you would explain what the situation is. And then they would repeat the problem. And then they would say, is that correct? And you say, yes. And then they say, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to help take care of that for you right away. Those are examples of what I'm talking about. I'm not going to name any names, but the person I'm going to talk about may be my wife, but frequently, and she's super intelligent as well, but I think she just likes to discuss things. And I could be asking her a question or halfway through my sentence, and she'll say no. And she'll want to jump in and elaborate or comment on something. And I'm like, wait a minute, what did you just say no for? Don't say that. You could, and maybe in a true environment where you're on the phone with someone, if somebody calls and asks something, even if you know the answer is no right away, I wouldn't say that. I would say, hey, let me make sure I understand what you're asking. All right, that's a great idea. Let me see what I can do about that. And then at least put forth an effort to try to do what needs to be done. But use favorable language like saying yes, or let me work on that for you. If you say no right away, or you use negative language, it kind of defeats the purpose of customer service. Time skills, time management skills, being able to prioritize what's important and what's urgent is really important. And this is a tougher one. We didn't really talk a whole lot about this in session one, but the ability to read customers. It's harder if you're on the phone with people. I like having video meetings where you can watch people's reactions to words that you say, or ideally, if you're face to face in real life. There's a lot of nonverbal cues that you'll pick up on from people, but even like a sigh, but just different body language when people, cross their arms. Normally they're shutting down. There's different things people do, and you can tell how agitated someone is or how excited they are by being able to look at them, or you could hear it through the tone of their voice. But the point is, work hard to try to understand people's body language and being able to read customers, handle surprises, tenacity, and work ethic. I like always trying as hard as I can for people. I liked responding to their inquiries immediately, saying, "Hey, I received this. I'm going to work on this. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Let me do some research on this. It will probably take me a day before I can get back with you, but I did receive your request." And then you already get number 10, the willingness to learn. And it goes back to number 4, the knowledge of product or service. When I first started the combined federal campaign, truthfully, I came out of the business world. I sold a lot of technology goods and services to the federal government. I knew a lot of federal government employees, but I didn't even know about the CFC. I didn't know about OPM's program that they rolled out to everybody. And so it was a real learning experience. I remember my first year of the campaign, I volunteered to be on the help desk because I was tired of not understanding things. There's so much to learn on the CFC, especially if you're a non-government employee. So I got all sorts of amazing questions from people that forced me to do some research and learn things very quickly that others wouldn't have been exposed to. So I like that willingness to learn. I think that's an important trait to be able to serve one another as well. And Miriam had a good point, listening, being a good listener in customer service. We talked about that a lot last week. I think that's a really important point. So let's talk about decision making. And we talked a little bit about decision making before. Remember the Colin Powell 40-70? You want to be decisive. But these are some other leadership qualities as it relates to being a decisive leader, about being responsible and accountable, being confident in your decisions. It's important that that confidence is that confident body language that you're portraying to your team. But something really important, be slow to change your mind once you reach a decision. If you flip-flop your decisions frequently in front of your employees or people that you're leading, then they're going to keep poking at you and encourage you to flip decisions, maybe for their own personal agenda frequently. Now, I'm not saying it's not okay to change your mind. You can do that, but try not to do that too often, because that will, I think that could, ruin the morale and tarnish relationships in the environment as a leader. I think that's important. So let's talk a little bit more about problem solving. I love this quote, every problem has a solution. You just have to be creative enough to find it. Okay. This is an interesting quote. I think you guys can agree with that. And that's why it's important to work with a team. I like having an open environment where people feel comfortable to be able to share their ideas or their comments. It's not a dictatorship. This is more of a democracy where we all work together as a team. We all should feel comfortable of asking questions, sharing ideas, so we can always come up with the right solution for, our customers or our purpose. I like this 4-step process is a really simple one as it relates to problem solving. It's important as a team. Okay. It might be your leadership team, or it might be all of us together. It's important that you define the problem. It needs to be clear to everybody what the true problem is, because I bet if you ask other people, "Hey, what do you think the problem is?" you're going to get different definitions from everybody. So it's important you get all on the same sheet of music. So you define the problem first, and then have that safe environment where you can generate new ideas. And normally the best ideas come from the most surprising people. And that's why I like making the team as big as possible, but try to generate new ideas to learn new things, evaluate and select the solutions that you want to implement. And then to me, the fourth one is really, really important. You want to take action, you want to implement, but you need to evaluate and monitor if this is fixing the problem or not. And so you need to stay connected to that. You didn't solve the problem, you're just monitoring it right now to make sure you've got the right solution in place. Does that make sense? All right.
James, I'd like to call on you. I see your hand raised.
Oh, you know what? I just noticed that my hand was raised, and I'm not sure what I did.
Yeah, I think it's that like AI gesture thing.
You
So
know what?
anyway,
It
I was just
probably was.
teasing, but I was chuckling about that.
I think I was just giving myself a high five. And by the
Oh,
way,
I
I
like
do
that.
want to,
That's better. Yes,
I'm
high
giving
five back.
myself a high five because today is my birthday. And I want everyone to know I care so much about you. I'm sharing it with you. So you get
Happy
almost 2
birthday,
hours.
James.
Thank you. Thank you. I turned 29 again. I'm so happy.
Yeah, I thought you were 28.
So another really important quality from a leadership standpoint is the ability to persuade, influence, and negotiate, right? Persuade, influence, and negotiate. Whoop. Boy, my mouse is all over the place today. Goodness. All right. So persuading is the ability to convince others to take appropriate action, right? So it's important for us to be able to persuade people into maybe our point of view or what we want them to do, right? That's important from a communication standpoint. Negotiating is really the ability to discuss and reach a mutually satisfactory agreement, right? And we talked about that a little bit last week about getting to the win-win, where you want to make sure that they feel like they're getting something, you're getting something. So it's a successful negotiation that makes it easier to negotiate in the future. And then influencing is the ability to effectively persuade and negotiate. It kind of blends these all together, right? And to me, influencing is critical. And as a leader and as a human being, I think it goes directly back to our communication and getting what we want out of life. So I think I mentioned this last week, but there's Karras is to me kind of a well-known negotiator. Chester Karras, he had a great book if you want to learn more about negotiating the negotiating game. So that's a great book to reference as well. And then about influencing and motivating people, Dr. Robert Cialdini has a great book as well, and it's on influencing other people. And there were 6 key points that Dr. Cialdini referenced in his book. This is kind of a rarer book. Allie knows about it very well. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to read it before, but the 6 key principles, and I'll start with my favorite, reciprocity, reciprocating. If I want to ask, if I go to a business networking event and I want to ask for a referral or I want to get a referral from someone, what's the most effective way to get them to give me a referral? Do I sit back and wait for it? Do I try to be really nice, tell a funny joke? One quick way is to give them a lead first. Give them a referral. Hey, I've got a referral for you I think would be great. And naturally, it's in our DNA as human beings. People want to reciprocate. If you do something good for them, they're going to do something good for you. And Dr. Cialdini really points that out. But I like doing things like that if you can, if you're in a situation where you can do that. Reciprocating is important. Commitment and consistency is another one. Social proof. You see all the social influencers today on social media. Hey, it must be really cool if that person that has 5 million viewers has those sunglasses. Hollywood is big for that. The social proof. Also, similar to the social proof, liking If someone's highly admired or highly liked, famous, that goes hand in hand. Also, people of authority. So this really relates truthfully back into the CFC more than any of these. But if we can get leaders in our office or the commander to get a photo op or a PR op of signing a pledge form, they went first, they set up their account and they donated to the CFC. That authority figure really carries a lot of weight. So we want to try to exploit that if we can. And then scarcity. And what I mean by scarcity, or what Dr. Caldini meant by scarcity, is, there's a limited time for you to do this. Or I don't know if you've ever flicking around the channels and you see the QVC and they talk about, oh, there's only 15 of these left. Oh, there's only 10 left. There's 5 left. It's like, oh my gosh, they're going to run out of these. I've got to buy that. And it's something emotional that taps into you that is influencing you to, you know what, I'm kind of on the fence, but now I'm going to do it because these things are selling like hotcakes. I need that special mop. So I think those are interesting ways to influence people as well. So thus far, any questions from you guys on these? Okay. All right. So let me kind of move into the next section where we're talking about partnerships and alliances. Partnerships and alliances are really important in many ways. And let me kind of highlight this. Some key principles about partnering is, you want to focus less on defining the business plan and more on how you're going to work together. How are you going to benefit by partnering with each other? Okay. And you want to be really flexible with this because they might have a complete different agenda than you. I like developing metrics pegged not only on partnering goals, but also on progress. So in the business world, I used to write a strategic partner plan with my top 3 partners of the technology company that I talked about. And it was a 100-day plan, and I tracked milestones of progress. So it would keep everybody motivated that, hey, we're on track with our goals. We want to make sure that we get to the next one and get to the next one. I'm demonstrating that things are successful. So I think that's important. And then instead of trying to eliminate the differences, because different partners, different alliances, different offices or agencies, again, have different agendas. And you just think of the world today. You want to ruin a conversation at a dinner party, bring up your religion or bring up politics, right? That's the fastest way to divide. Okay. And it always drives me crazy. We're all good people. We care for one another. We want our kids to be successful in life. We have 95% of our values are very similar, but yet we sit and talk about our differences all the time. And that can divide things really quickly. Rather than trying to eliminate those differences, in this instance of partnering, think of how can we create value by leveraging the differences. And this kind of goes back to the Strength Finders discussion that I talked about a little bit last week, that we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. The world tells us to focus on our weaknesses and train harder or learn more to fix those. And the book Strength Finders really focuses on, you want to find team members or alliances, other people that fill in those weaknesses so you can focus on what you're really good at. Okay. So that really creates enormous value when you can do that. Go beyond formal governance structures to encourage collaborative behavior. I like that. And then spend as much time on managing internal stakeholders as managing the relationship with your partners. So again, back to those milestones, I like kind of keeping track of those things. All right. So I'm going to move into the business acumen part of the ECQ. Business acumen really is, the objective is to manage, human, financial, and information resources strategically. That's the objective of that ECQ. And then the competencies: financial management, human capital management. It's really managing people. We talked a lot about that last week already, so I won't spend too much time on that. And then technology management. And technology management's kind of interesting when you really think about that. But I'll elaborate on that in just a minute. So this to me is more of a mindset, when you are thinking of being a business entrepreneur, being a leader in the marketplace. It's a mindset, it's an attitude that you need to kind of start with in the very beginning. And this is what I'm talking about specifically is if you're thinking about starting a new business. Okay. You need to get your head in the right space in order to take that risk and move forward. I work with a lot of the other part of my life with Kernan Consulting. That's the name of my company. I work with a lot of businesses all around the country, really all around North America. And a lot of them have been startup businesses that I'll work with. And so I wanted to walk through some of the things as it relates back to questions that I would ask any new business owner or entrepreneur. Number one, are you comfortable about taking risks? If you think you want to start a new business, but you're not comfortable about taking risks, I would ask, why do you want to do this? That doesn't make sense. Number two, are you independent or do you need to work with a team? Do you need that structure or can you work independent? That to me is an important one. Are you persuasive? Can you influence people? Being more outgoing, that's important. Are you able to negotiate? Are you creative? Can you think outside the box? And are you supported by others? Are there opportunities in front of you or demand for your goods or services that you're interested in forming a business on? To me, number 6 is really, really important because if the answer is yes to that one, then that really is a big head start. That's a big head start. So objectives for financial management, obviously we want to maximize profits. If you're starting a new idea or new business, we want to secure liquidity and cash flow. Making money is really easy. I always joke, you just have to spend less than you take in, right? But the key point of that is you have to take money in. You have to be selling something in the beginning, and you want to get to positive cash flow as quick as you can. I've been involved in probably over a dozen different businesses, either as an owner or part owner. And I haven't had to go out and seek financial capital from anyone. I could always self-finance these ideas and then reinvest the profits as I go. That's more of a belief system that I have. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. When you go out and you've got a great idea, but you need capital, you can borrow from a bank, you can do things like that. But if you get money from like a VC, venture capitalists, sometimes they will take a big chunk of your business, a big chunk of the profits, put their own people in there, and then you're not really making the decisions anymore. It belongs to someone else. So be careful about that. It's important to always be compliant, test financial scenarios and being able to communicate with the stakeholders. And the stakeholders in this scenario would be more of the owners, the key leaders and whoever put money into that idea. You need to be able to communicate effectively with them. So how many of you had an accounting class or finance class either in high school or college? Just raise your hands. Yep, Jen. Okay. Most everybody did. That's really important. I remember I was in a sales training years and years ago, and it was like a national kickoff meeting. We had some motivational speaker come in, and one of the interesting questions he asked all the salespeople in the room, there were probably about 30 people in the room. I remember him asking, he said, "How many of you had an accounting class?" And I remember looking around the room because I was up towards the front and I didn't want to be the only one who put my hand up. There was about only 10% of the room put their hand up. And he said, if you want to be really, really good at sales, he goes, you need to take an accounting class. You need to understand the numbers, understand the difference between, assets, liabilities, margins, profits, that all goes into play. And being someone that's financially savvy in sales, the sales, being able to influence or negotiate or persuade people, that's really important. So it's not critical but I think it's important as it relates back to the big picture. And obviously, that statistic, it probably rings true today within my customer base. There's a lot of new customers that will come to me, and I'll do an assessment on their business. We'll look at their business plan, what their goals are. I'll look at financial statements, and very quickly I can see how well they're doing. And most of the people that aren't doing well financially, meaning they're not making a lot of profits, or maybe they're losing money, they're not very good at reading financial statements either. And they're not that hard. You can simplify things, but I think it's important that you have an understanding of how to read the financial statements overall. So how many of you had the still balance your checkbook, or at least have balanced your checkbook in the days? Okay. All right. All right, Cynthia, I saw you slow to raise your hand. You're kind of laughing. It, I still do it for my business every month, but I don't do it on my personal accounts, to be fully transparent. But I remember years and years and years ago, my father taught me how to balance a checkbook. And again, it's really easy, to make money if you're spending less than you bring in. And there's no greater experiment or no greater exercise than to balancing your checkbook. And if you balance it, you should know where you're at all the time. Running a business should be the same way. Frequently, I'll come, especially like if I'm speaking at a big event, I'll run into a business owner and I'll say, "Hey, how are you doing so far this year? Were you profitable last quarter? Were you profitable last month?" And I can't tell you how often I hear this answer. People will say, "You know what? I don't know yet because my bookkeeper hasn't sent me the financials." And I'm like, "Ugh, ugh, that just hurts my soul to hear someone say that." It's important that you know the numbers, or at least have visibility. You shouldn't be relying on someone else to tell you if you're making money or not. And some people like, "Well, I'll just look at my bank balance." Well, that doesn't take into account, liquidity in a business of what income is coming in and what expenses are going out. You want to have that as real time as humanly possible. That's really the tell-all tale. So I'm old fashioned. I like in many programs today kind of balance your checkbook for you with your bank balances, but I like keeping your eye on the ball. You need to know where you're at cash flow wise. So the scope of financial management kind of relates back to, planning, budgeting, managing, and assessing your risk and overall procedures. The financial management in a business or an office or an agency, are any of you involved in any kind of financial management with your current role in your office today? Jen, you are? Okay, Cynthia. Okay. All right, good. Shelley or Heather, you a little bit as well. Yeah, that's rare. It's not very many of us are in that kind of role, but again, I think it's really important strategically to have your eye on the numbers, and that's related back to the CFC. It's one of the things I really appreciate. The MPMA specifically, we've really dialed in our reporting, and work with the Alleys or the Jameses in the different territories to get an understanding of the reporting. Because to me, that makes it fun. It's like having, the scoreboard in sports. Why do they keep score if it's not important? And I like seeing those weekly reports because it monitors our progress. And to me, it keeps me motivated, because I look at this like a game. And in the business world, you want to manage and minimize your risk as much as possible. There's different market risks. I don't know if any of you looked at the stock. Hopefully you didn't see what the stock market did yesterday, but I think NVIDIA is a big technology company. They lost over 10% of their value, which was enormous. The markets all went down about 2.5%. I mean, is really pretty bad. But there's a lot of volatility in the world economy, the national economy, and even some of our local economies. We're protected a little bit more in the Midwest. We're not as risk prone, I guess, as a lot of the Sun Belt states or the highly populated cities. But there's market risk with everything, and you want to try to minimize your risk the best you can. There's credit risks out there, liquidity risk. The liquidity is really related back to your cash flow. You want to keep a positive cash flow and make sure that you're bringing in more money than you're spending. And sometimes you need to, and I had a line of credits in place with my businesses as well. But when the startups is what I meant when, I would self-fund the startup of a business and not rely on other people's money. But then once you get going and growing, you can leverage lines of credit and so forth. And I, bought assets like buildings, of course, we would borrow money. And then operational risks is something as well. But the key is you want to maximize your return and minimize your risk. That's really what that point is all about. So let's talk a little bit about human capital and really leading teams. The human capital management is really an intangible asset or quality not listed in your company's balance sheet. Your people. Most of us are in the professional services business. Your people is the most important asset that we have. And I joke all the time, I was the one who came up with this, but if it's the most important, why isn't it on your balance sheet? A lot of people don't have things like that on their balance sheet. It's maybe more of a intrinsic value of the business, but people do business with people. And that's why we, as leaders, that's why we're the most important asset really in any business. And I like saying that and creating that mindset in our environment. So factors that help determine human capital, skills and qualifications. When we recruit people or hire people, I just was on a meeting earlier today, a coaching call with someone, and I said, hey, my job is to make you better. And I was speaking for them because they were getting ready to counsel or coach an employee. And they say, hey, I don't want to come across as being overhanded or really mean. And it's like, look, you don't have to apologize for anything. I would just tell my employees, hey, I'm coming down on you and I'm explaining this to you because I want you to do well and I believe in you. But my job is to make you better. Okay. So I need to share the good, the bad, the ugly. Okay. You may not want to invite me over for Christmas dinner every year, but I can promise you this, you're going to be better at the end of the day because you're working with me because I care and I'm going to share this stuff with you. So we need to focus on skills and qualifications. Ongoing education, that's super important. The work experience and the background, that's incredibly important. For me, it also was important people's social skills and their ability to communicate. Organizations that I ran, I used to joke and say, everybody's in sales, not just the salespeople, everybody's in sales. You talk to customers on the phone, you go visit customers, you mail them invoices and then field calls when they've got questions about their invoices. So any kind of interaction with our end user customer, we all need to know what our 30-second pitch is. We all need to understand what our offering is. We all need to be educated on what our value proposition is. So that communication and social skills, I think, was really important. Cognitive and emotional intelligence. This is something that really relates back more to people's core values, but it's their judgment. And in the longer ELCA courses, we spend a little bit more time talking about and understanding as it relates to all of us are different and unique, but all of us have different upbringings. All of us have different educations. All of us have maybe different religions. We're all different, and that's great. You need to embrace that, but understand that when you're learning more about other people, and your upbringing completely defines where your moral compass is. Some cultures think lying is acceptable. They think if you get away with it, it was meant to be, and that's not who I am. My moral compass is very different than someone that would ever say that to my face. So that judgment has everything to do with your moral compass. My whole point on that is I think that's a really important point to understand about your employees. Just know that we're all very different. We all had different upbringings. And as it relates to that, our moral compasses are different. And again, some people think it's okay to not tell the truth. I don't know about you, but I want to work with people that are honest and full of integrity. I think that's critical. Those are some of my core values, but that's important. And then I like interjecting your personality into the workplace. I don't know about you, but life is hard enough, right? And I want to make it as fun as possible. And I want to be a light in the workplace. Um, be a lead by example type of person and keep harmony and laughter and make things fun in the workplace. And hope you guys agree with that. All right. So leadership's also about getting people to understand and believe in the vision and the work that we're achieving, work on achieving the goals that have been set. This is why it's really important to kind of understand our purpose or our why. That's why it's really important, really, for any business or any project to have some type of goals and business plan. Why are we doing this? What are the goals? What are the milestones? And as it relates back to the CFC, it's no different than what I just explained. We've got that one-page business plan in the CFC that will share the results of what that office did in the CFC pledges and the number of donors over the past 3 years. And then we'll build off of that where we want to maybe add 10% or maybe add 5% to what you did last year and challenge them to be better. And then how are we going to get there? That should be part of that business plan. That should be part of that vision. But when you have a plan, when you have goals, you understand your why, your purpose, your vision. To me, that's so critically important because it keeps people motivated. And the campaign, I'll say this to each and every one of you, the campaign, some of you've done it like Jen Ward, you've been involved in campaign as a leader for a long time. You get this and know this, but the campaign drags out. It's a good 4+ months. And it seems like we're doing work, for a month or 2 months before the campaign even starts. And then we're doing work a month or 2 months after the campaign ends. So it's almost a year-long commitment, but it really isn't for you. But what keeps you motivated is understanding the purpose behind why we're doing what we're doing. Okay. And leaders help explain and connect each of our team members to that point. Okay. So I won't go into detail on these, but 5 core functions of great management. I just talked about the importance of planning, strategic thinking, planning, creating a goal. And to me, a vision is a business plan in your head, a goal in your head. But a business plan is when things become a reality. And it's one of the things I do as a business coach with people that I talk to. A lot of people have great ideas. I go, "Hey, do you have a written business plan? Do you have written goals?" No. Well, it's not real to me yet. So I have a one-page business plan template that I'll work with people that helps define the goals, the objectives, what your why is, your purpose, and then what your unique selling proposition is. And in the business world, what USP means is how are you different or better with your goods or services than your local competition. Okay. And that's a really tough thing for some people to figure out, but that strategic plan is really important. If I know most of you probably have side businesses or family members with side businesses. Normally in the ELCA program, we share that one-page template. There's a CFC one-page business plan, and then there's also a business version of the one-page business plan. If you want a copy of that, just let us know and we'll be happy to send that out to you. But great management, great leadership, it all starts with strategic thinking and a plan. That's number one. Organizing, okay, and that's really training and then getting the structure in place for accountability, leading and motivating, staffing properly, make sure you've got the right team in place, and then controlling and evaluating. That's really back to that monitoring that I've talked about. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more also about technology management. And I'm in the tech world. I'm a techie. Most of the upbringing in businesses that I was a part of were all technology companies. And subsequently, most of the businesses that I'm involved in, mergers and acquisitions, of me helping them buy or sell businesses, or businesses that I coach and consult with are tech businesses. So this topic is near and dear to my heart, but I'll make it as exciting to everybody as I can. when I look at this, there's two different things. There's technology management and then management of technology. I think we get what the difference is. And when I look at really any business, I always think of three categories, people, process, and technology. The people involved, you got to have the right people in the right seats. The processes really need to be as automated as you can and documented and trained so the processes are followed by all, right? And then the technology is a really incredible, important tool. We want to make sure we've got the right tools in place. And I've always said, as leaders, it's my responsibility to make sure I have the right tools. And if I had a different graphic, I would have a tool set, and somebody trying to hammer a nail in the wall with a screwdriver. That's my dad, chiming in my ear. James, you always have to have the right tool for the job. But as leaders, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're giving the right tools to our team. Okay. So I talked a little bit already about people, process, and technology. So that's enough on that topic. So the last ECQ I'll go through really quickly is building coalitions. The competencies identified by OPM on this is really partnering, political savviness, and then influencing negotiating. And I talked a little bit about that. So this ECQ will be really quick. We'll dive into that. So, all right. So before I move into this next section, does anybody have any questions or comments about what we went through before? Want to just take a break and for a second and catch our breath? Any questions? Okay. Do any of you have another business or something that you're involved with of selling, Mary Kay or Amway? Okay, Jen. A lot of family. What's interesting to me is I didn't see this. I lived in California for 25 years after college. And when I moved back to Nebraska, and I've been here now, I think 8 years. It's interesting to me how many people have, side hustles, a second business, a third business, four business. I went to a networking event, and the guy's at every networking event, his name is Michael. Every time I see him, he hands me a different business card. He sells legal services. He does Amway. I mean, he sells everything. And I always joke about, the guy, you've got, so many different business cards. I don't remember who you are anymore. So it always shocks me to think about how many different side businesses people have, but it's just the way of the times, I guess. All right. So this next section, I wanted to talk a little bit more about team building, because team building is so important. I like this acronym. I shared it with you earlier, but together, everyone achieves more. Team, setting goals and expectations in writing, right? Role clarification. Thomas kind of hinted at that earlier. The ability to problem solve and get through those interpersonal relations are important. And then creating that culture of success. And I already spent a lot of time talking about what that environment looks like, the workplace, and why that's important to our success. So as it relates to the big picture, it's always important to identify training needs, choose the right training methods. Remember, some people can just read an instruction manual and figure out how to put something together by just reading it. Some people need to be shown it. Some people are visual learners. Okay. And when I think of one of the greatest instructors of all time is, any of you remember John Wooden? John Wooden was the Hall of Fame basketball coach for UCLA when they won series of national championships. He's old school, back a long time ago. He was the one who coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he played for UCLA. And anyway, he's a Hall of Fame coach. He's now passed, unfortunately. But when you think of leadership in sports, John Wooden's name goes hand in hand. And his approach was always of like, look, I'm going to explain what I want you to do. I'm going to show you what to do. Then I'm going to make you show me what I just showed you. and then you go do it, and then I'll give you ongoing coaching. And that training method is just a real simple way, but it's the act of doing things. And I think of my very first job when I started in sales. It was almost like, hey, here's the phone book. You just need to call a bunch of people and see if they'll meet with you and buy stuff that we sell. I mean, that was my onboarding. And you know, you had to figure it out real quick. That wasn't a very good onboarding, but you know, it's kind of that sink or swim. Fortunately, in that environment, I had a lot of smart people that I could look and watch and listen to, and how they did it, and I caught on pretty quick. So make sure that you choose the right training methods. The ongoing coaching, like I just said with John Wooden, I think is great. As it relates back to employee morale, you know, the team building activities with the CFC teams that we'll have an opportunity to work with, I want to bring the fun back to the CFC. And there, there were some unfavorable words or unfavorable rules that OPM came up with 8 years ago as it relates to the CFC. One of the big ones was they no longer want to accept cash. Why OPM made that decision is because it was very costly for them to create that chain of custody and track, you know, a non-assigned pledge. Someone gives a $20 bill because they walked into a chili feed. That's the way it used to be done years ago. It worked really well. It was easy for people to reach in their wallet and grab a $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 bill, and walk into some fun event, a team building activity in the office, and learn more about the CFC. But it was unfavorable because a lot of people did it, but OPM did it because it just cost a lot of money. And you can imagine one tracking that $20 bill all the way through until it gets to the processing center. And then once it gets to the processing center, this year there's over 5,000 charities. They were required to take that $20 and divide it by 5,000. Okay. And then whatever number that was, it goes out to 5,000 plus different charities. So when they modernized the campaign, that was an example of something they did to drive cost out of the campaign to give us a longer lifespan. And the whole intention was, instead of it being a fortune to administer this campaign, the whole objective was to, everybody wants to give 100 cents of every dollar to the charity that they're trying to give the money to, right? They want to help the local people in need. They don't want that money to go 60% to go to the charity and 40% to administer the campaign, because they had some things that cost a lot of money. So anyway, I bring that up on purpose because you can still do a lot of fun events, competitions, food, anything with food involved in the campaign. You know, instead of calling it a fundraising, I call it fun raising event, or educational event is what OPM wants to call the events that we hold in people's offices. Or another smart thing to do is take a look at what's already on the calendar. There may be a health fair at the office. There may be a parade for Thanksgiving going on in your office, or a potluck. Great. Hey, can I have a table at that event? You know, you're already driving attendance. We're going to get a lot of people there. Let me have a table for the CFC and we'll give things away. And we just want, you know, 3 minutes to get up and talk about the CFC. There's no reason why we can't have fun at these events. Jen commented the health fair benefit fairs work really well. Yeah, I remember there was a huge one over at Offutt Air Force Base. And I think, Thomas, there was one in the cafeteria over at Stratcom where we had one. And I think at that time, we also had the commander, this was probably 7 years ago, came over, and there was a photo op. A bunch of people were taking his picture because he was signing a pledge form. But he was right there in front of everybody. And those health fairs are great because it drives lots of attendance. My point is, look for fun team building activities as it relates to the CFC events that are already going on in that office to piggyback off of. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We'll just do our own thing at those events that are already planned. And then there's a gazillion of fun ideas that Allie and I can share, or other MPMA employees could share and to give ideas to the coordinators to run. And then to wrap up my thought on this, delegating and then managing talent, those are important as well. So I talked a little bit about that book called Traction. In the business world, the book Traction was a big New York bestseller, really popular book. And it talked about EOS, the entrepreneur's operating system. It really is a business blueprint or business structure that helps people get more traction in their business and get you firing on all cylinders. And I wanted to bring this back up again with all of you because I've implemented, so I went through all the training and I work with a lot of businesses and I implement EOS in their businesses. And it takes what I've done is I broke it down into 12 different exercises, and I'll take the leadership team of each business through 12 weeks of exercises that will take anywhere from 60 minutes to an hour and a half. But it's really designed to kind of bring everybody together to get everybody's input. When you create a structure in a business or you create goals in a business, if your employees or other people feel like they had a voice, they're that much more motivated to try harder to make sure that we get those goals, as opposed to someone that, here's what the goals are, just go do it. It's kind of that dictatorship comment again, where that's not a very fun environment to be in. So we want to be as participative as possible in the CFC, but the book made a big point of that. You want your whole leadership team involved and also aspiring leaders. So I would typically bring people through these exercises, but it gets everybody on the same sheet of music, gets everybody customer service focused. I like it's important to respond immediately with feedback. When people have an idea or people have a problem, you want to get right back to them. Okay. You'll certainly have that opportunity in the CFC. I took a call yesterday after hours on my cell phone. Terry Morgan had given my number out, and I got a call from a coordinator way out in Western Nebraska. And they're like, hey, I'm trying to send this message out. I don't have the right terminology. And maybe I'm looking at the wrong email or the wrong toolkit, but I leave next week for vacation. I'm gone the whole month of September, and I'm trying to get this message out. Can you help me? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's just do it right now. So I wanted to respond immediately instead of postponing and pushing it off. It's always important to be professional, honest, and helpful. I think that was an example I just demonstrated there. I want to always do my best on that. Include your personality when building relationships. This was kind of a funny comment to say, but all of us are different and all of us have different personalities, and people do business with people. And I think it's really important to make it fun, but to involve your personality, whatever your God-given gifts are in your personality, try to use those to the best of your ability. We all have something that we can bring to the table. And I think it's really important to make it more memorable for people. And I see when people involve their personalities in the workplace, it can be positive and encouraging, but that's that culture that you want. And these were some other key points in that book that they were making as well as it relates to the whole EOS wheel. And the one closing comment I'll just say is back to that servant heart leadership. Try to put other people's interests in front of your own, even though it doesn't fit your agenda. That's what we want to be, those servant heart leaders as it relates into management, leadership, or being an LE in the campaign. Allie and I like referencing books. So there's a couple books that we wanted just to highlight again from a leadership standpoint. This is more on the business side, The Good to Great by Jim Collins. He talks about the importance of intellectual capital, human capital. That's a great book to read if you like books. And then anything John Maxwell writes. I love John Maxwell's leadership books, but this is one of the more popular ones, the 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork. That's a great team building book as well. So Um, so conflict resolution, we talked a little bit about this before, but I just at a high level, I wanted to walk through a couple slides on it. But really, it's the ability to successfully resolve a conflict with someone. You want to try to manage stress quickly while remaining alert and calm. There was a test I had early in my leadership career. I was appointed, I was a VP of sales and marketing for a big tech company. And I think the president pulled me in his office and said, "Hey, you're going to need to let someone go in our medical division. They're not doing very good, and I want to demote them and move them into a sales role." And the numbers spoke for themselves. I agreed with their assessment, but yet he made me go do it and explain it to someone. So to make it worse, I was a young executive. Uh, I had to talk to a female employee, okay, and she was older than me and had more experience than me, so that was intimidating in itself. But I remember vividly going into a conference room and sitting down with her. Her name was Judy, and I said, "Hey, Judy, I need to share something with you, but the performance of the medical division hasn't been very good. We're going to make some changes, and unfortunately, I'm going to take you and move you from the director of the team to a sales rep on the team. I still feel that you bring good value as a salesperson to the team, but we're going to make some other changes and make a leadership change, and I'm going to move you into a sales role." And immediately she starts crying. Okay. And made me uncomfortable. And I didn't know what to do or say, but I sat there for a second and I was trying to process this. And I just remember kind of got hysterical. So I remember standing up in the office or in the conference room, and the conference rooms was like a corner conference room and had windows on both sides. And I remember standing up and I said, "Hey, I could see that you're visibly upset. I'm going to give you some time to yourself, and I'm going to go back to my office. And when you regain your composure, let's sit down and work this out." And I think as I was just starting to stand up, I didn't even get stood up completely. She just kind of stopped crying. And it shocked me. And I remember thinking, I go, was she faking it? Or did she really mean it? I know she was upset and mad, but and I'll tell you a second part of the story. It's kind of funny. I remember going home that night and I asked my wife, I remember saying, "Hey, why do women cry?" Okay. And I think before I even got through that whole sentence, she said, "Because it makes men weak," is what she said to me. And I could see some chuckles there. But I felt like that's exactly in that scenario, that's exactly what happened because they were an emotional state trying to get a different viewpoint than what I was expressing and wanted to see how I would respond, if she cried. And I hope I responded professionally and it made her stop crying, but she spoke and we resolved the conflict and we ended up moving her into that role. And she actually did really well in that role. But that's kind of how it started. I just wanted to share that with you. And then another important point, I always like taking the high road. You don't want to get personal or unprofessional. That's something people can do very quickly. If I was ever dealing with a conflict with anybody and they started swearing or they got unprofessional or attacked me or someone else, I would stop and say, "Listen, I'm not going to let you speak to that person or speak to me that way. When you can regain your composure, you can call me back and we'll have another conversation. But for now, the conversation's over." And, in years in the business world, that happened more than once, I'll just say. And I think it's always important as leaders, employees or people, do what we do, not what we say. So I think it's important to be an example in these scenarios and see your employees they need to see you take the high road and be professional about it instead of, getting mean and getting unprofessional back to someone. That's the worst thing that you can do in that moment. It's also important, I think, to maintain your voice level. When people are upset, they're going to stand above you at your desk or raise their voice or slam their fist down. And I would just keep the same tone I'm talking to you right now. And normally that brings people down. I say, have a seat, and it will bring the energy down as long as you don't stand up and pound your fist on the desk as well, right? I think that's important. So the conflict resolution strategies. So the importance of achieving the goals on the left, the importance of maintaining a relationship is on the right. It starts on the bottom from low to high. The worst thing you can do is avoid it. If there's a conflict, you want to try to resolve it. By avoiding it, that's the worst thing you can do, because it's going to be lowest on the relationship and achieving the goal side. You could be accommodating, or you could be competing. Those are different. Normally, the compromise is kind of that mini win-win, but both parties win by giving up something that they really wanted. That moves up the chart the right direction. To me, the best area is when both parties win, when both parties get what really they want. And that's that true collaborating. But normally you need to sit down and talk it out and figure out how both parties can win. That's what you want to do. Ideally, that's where it's at. There's a lot more information on these topics that are going to be in the workbooks that we'll email you. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read through the workbook, but there's a lot more material that we've shared with you in the workbooks. Here's a couple other good books on these topics. Getting to Yes is a good one. The Anatomy of Peace, and then The Peacemaker by Ken Sande. So this is the last section that we'll wrap up with. I just have a few to go over here, but let's talk about leveraging diversity. So we've talked already before about our strengths and our weaknesses, and I've talked about how all of us are different, whether it's our upbringing, whether it's our religion, whether it's where we came from. There's a lot of different things about each person. I think it's important that we need to understand what those are and try to leverage those to our benefit, because collectively we're better together. And I like this example of a watch. So this is a close-up of a watch, and you can just look and see how many little gears there are that does the precision timekeeping. If you go in and take one of those little gears off, don't you think the watch is going to fail? It's not going to tell time very well. And I think it's an important analogy when we look at really good teams, that all of us have an integral part to the success of what our goal or purpose is, right? And if you take one of those parts out, things aren't going to be running at an optimum level. And that's really what we want to do by leveraging diversity, understanding what our strengths are, and getting the most out of each person so we can blend together and be that watch. That's an important analogy, I think, just to share with. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Just a little preview of what we're going to talk about next session. I'll be there with you, but Allie's going to be the primary speaker next week. We'll talk more application, but we'll have some Q&A. It'll be a little bit more interactive instead of the true training part. It'll be more discussion led, but really we're going to walk through the leadership principles that we've shared, and then how we can apply those back to make you more of a change maker in the CFC, in the workplace, and in the community. Okay, so that'll be what we'll talk about next week. All right, Allie, any closing comments before we wrap up today? I went through those the best I could, and as promised, I'm getting you out before the time.
You did most excellent, James. So the only thing I have to say is, if you have not registered for those upcoming trainings, I think for the LEs, they're asking you all to attend twice. So no, there's a September round and an October round, but because you're all boots on the ground early, I would suggest, if you can fit it in your schedule, to do those trainings twice in the September round rather than waiting a little bit longer to October. That would be ideal. But we know that not all of you are with us full time. So that's the only thing I would say. I still need to sign up for mine too. So we'll see some of you next week for those. But otherwise, as James said, hopefully between what you're hearing with the training so far, now also with the CFC trainings that are happening about events management, some of the reporting that James alluded to, right? We will really make next week's session, our last one together, kind of that workshop sort of thing. So you can figure out as you work as sometimes, for the very first point of contact for some of our individuals to help you all be successful. So looking forward to next week, but James, looking forward to wishing you one more time. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. All right, everybody. I appreciate you being here today. We'll go ahead and let you go. I know all of you have lots to do. If you need anything or have any feedback or even any comments about what we've gone through training wise, here's our contact information. Want to make sure you have that. And we will see everybody next time. Thanks.